Hey guys, I want to talk about training methods for a minute. Like, there's no secret, there's a lot of training methodologies out there and a lot of approaches to training, and every trainer I know thinks that they do things pretty much in the best way possible. Like, if we thought there was a better way, we'd be doing it differently, right? So there's nothing like, there's not a certain, there's no arrogance to that. It's just a simple fact that if I thought there was a better way to do it, that's the way I'd be doing it, right? Um, but I want to say that I think these methodology arguments are largely nonsense, right? Like, don't get me wrong, like, there are some training techniques that I find personally to be too harsh, too much pressure, unfair to the dogs that I will not use because of those reasons. And there are other methods that I think are maybe a little less effective than some things. But for the most part, you take any behavior you want to teach, any behavior problem you want to deal with, what you're going to find if you look carefully is that there are dozens or hundreds of ways to accomplish that goal that work, that are effective. Now, they may vary in terms of how long they take to work, or they may vary in terms of how much pressure you put on the dog, or what the dog's experience is, and how much skill is required by the handler versus how much is like sort of a user-friendly plug-and-play sort of approach. And those are things that trainers all evaluate when they're choosing their methods. Like, some people put a priority on time. I want to get the job done as quickly as possible. Other people say, hey, I don't mind going a little more slowly if I want the dog to feel better about the process. Like, those are decisions that every trainer needs to make, and probably in the best case scenario with the input from their clients for what the clients are looking for and what they're comfortable with. But the point is that there are your way or the way you learn from this other person. That is not the only way to do it. And there are plenty of effective ways to do the same thing. And I think we all agree on that, right? So I don't think there's anybody who thinks my way is the only way. They think it's the best way, right? But what I want to talk about is where a lot of trainers mess up. In other words, the reason most people, most dog owners who hire a trainer don't get the results they want from their dogs has less to do with the method and approach that the trainer uses, and it has a whole lot more to do with how diligent they are about providing distractions. How hard do they work to work that dog in situations that are less than optimal? Because at the end of the day, obedience training is never more important than when the dog is excited or distracted. That's when it matters most. If the dog isn't responding when the world is going sideways, you don't have a dog you can count on when you need them the most, right? So I think we spend a whole lot more time talking about methods and approaches, arguing about that stuff, than we do addressing the real issue, which is, what distractions are you using? How hard are you working to put those distractions into your training? So when you're working with your own dog, be sure you create environments where things can be more difficult for the dog. The phrase I use all the time is always challenging, never overwhelming. We don't want to make it too easy, because if it's too easy, it's not fun for the dog, to be honest with you. If there's no challenge, the game gets boring really fast, right? But if the challenge is too hard and the dog goes, I can't do this, gets frustrated, or you get frustrated as a handler because the dog is making too many mistakes, then you're probably in the wrong range there too. One of the big mistakes people make with distractions is they just rely on the environment to provide distractions. And that, because we want to sort of control the level of distraction, that can either be like, you can end up in a situation where you have just the perfect amount of distractions for your dog, and that's great. But you can also end up in a situation where it's too much for the dog or too little for the dog. So it's super important. Yes, when you're working your dog in public, yes, you have to deal with the distractions that are present. You have to find strategies to work with them, and that's always a good thing. But when you have control of the environment, you need to also add deliberate distractions to the situation and work with them. I think a lot of times the other thing that happens is people get very comfortable, like they're bouncing balls, squeaking toys, walking other dogs by. Like, they have a set of distractions that their dog does really, really good with. And they're like, hey, that's awesome. I've got this distraction that works and I feel good. My dog makes me feel good because they're succeeding. My dog feels good because they're succeeding. But there's no pushing. Like, there's no stretching that dog's ability beyond that point. And so you end up with this sort of illusion that your dog is really good with distractions, but he's really, really good with practice distractions. So one of the things I tell my clients all the time is, once a distraction stops distracting your dog, it's not a distraction anymore. You got to change it, right? So it's super important to add those distractions to your training. And that's going to make more of a difference as to where you end up than whether you choose to use, food or toys, or you choose to do free shaping or luring or whatever. right? Mold, it doesn't matter. Whatever method you use to teach is far less important as far as I'm concerned than the actual diligence and the approach you use to distractions. All right, so that's it for now, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.